So let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to season number 3, episode number 6 of the Global Radio Ideas webinar. Good to see you again. My name is Ken Benson from P1 Media Group. We provide research, consulting, and insights to radio brands around the world. And with full disclosure, some of those brands include Ash's brands at Global in the UK. So great to have you here. And from Stuttgart, Germany, of course, the home of Mercedes-Benz, and another outstanding image producer who's really excited about today, Andy Sannemann, the CEO of Benztown. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Ken. Welcome, guys. So thanks, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar, from imaging producer to sound designers, how Global Radio UK is reimagining imaging. What a title. I mean, to this date, we really just covered about every aspect about like radio programming, promotions, marketing, and today for the first time, and that's really dear to my heart and really great. We're talking about my favorite subject, which is station imaging. So what did we do? We invited one of the top imaging producers in the world. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. He began his career making incredibly good cups of tea for the presenters, at least that's what I was being told in my research. For accountants and cleaners as well at Gemini FM in the UK. And because of his extraordinary tea making skills, he quickly became one of the team and started to load audio for the station, to soon become the station producer. He spent most of his career at Europe's biggest commercial radio company, Global Radio in the UK. Today, he's leading the sound design of Capital, the UK's #1 hit radio station, plus Capital Extra and Capital Dance. He's also responsible for the implementation of sound and imaging across the wider global portfolio. This is Hard, Smooth, Radio X, and Classic FM. I hope I didn't forget anything. Please welcome one of the top tea making and also imaging experts in the world, the group head of brand sound design for Global Radio in the UK, Ashley Bart, dear friend of mine. Welcome to the show, Ash.
Wow.
With my favorite question, Ash. So obviously, I mean, it's going to be hard for you to surprise me, but maybe tell us something we don't know about you, or the audience doesn't know about you.
I think there's probably quite a few things, but the biggest surprise is I've got a bit of a lookalike. I've got a twin brother. He's called Liam. We're quite competitive in life, whether it be cycling or whatnot. But I've got a funny story. When I was working at Gemini FM with these two guys, these were the morning show people back in the day, about 16, 15 years ago. I took him for a tour around the radio station, and I took him in my studio, and I popped out at one point to go somewhere, and someone came in from the station, ran in, Ash, this song's just dropped. You need to load it into the system. And Liam was just sat there going like, what? Like, what do I do? So yeah, I've got a lookalike.
Awesome. That's great. So I assume nobody beside your lookalike knew that before, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, let's get back to imaging.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's try to get a little grasp on like what's Ash's daily business here, and I'm sure we'll have some audio so that we can play that so people get like an impression of what Ash is doing on a daily basis.
Let's talk about the title of the webinar today and how you've rebranded things at Global. You used to use the term to describe people in your job function as imaging producers, and now you've transformed that to sound designers. Is that just a fancy new name, or is there some real significance behind the change?
It's a good question, but it's one that I truly believe in. And basically, when I started out about 17 years ago, imaging producer was the term, and it made sense. You know, like I'll spell it out. The reason is because there's no pictures, so we create an image in people's minds with the sound. Okay, so it makes sense. That's why it's imaging producers. But that was 17 years ago. And now we do have pictures. We live in a very modern world with social media, video, and everything else. And, you know, today we do more than that. You know, we're making sounds to pictures. So we're more of sound designers. It's not just that imaging producing anymore. Back in the day, but now with uni courses and school, it's all about sound design, you know. And so I think we were one of the first to change it. But it's worked out really well. And, you know, we've hired probably like 6 or 7 roles since that change. And our job entries went from probably like 6 up to 200 because people could associate themselves with sound designers a lot more.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move. So let's say I'm an imaging producer. So what are the skills that I need to become like a sound designer, or what makes a good sound designer in general, not maybe just for global and for capital, but also in general? What do you think, like what makes a good sound designer, and what do you need as an imaging guy to basically become a sound designer?
Yeah, I think it's the exact same, really, but it's taking that step back and, realizing how you can adapt your skills. It's the same job. Yes, it has a different title, but probably a lot of imaging producers don't know how to put video into Pro Tools. They don't know how to put video into Audition. We work in minutes and seconds. Do imaging producers understand frames? Do they understand LUFS, which is, a sound level in audio?
Yeah.
And it's probably 50% no, and I think just by understanding that whole new little bit of visual, little bit of video world can take you to a whole new level. So I think just a slight little bit of adjusting, also time codes, essentially it's all the same, it's just different language. And I think it's just, educating yourself in a tiny little bit in something else can open up a whole new world.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we discussed you working for various brands, and I ran through them like a couple minutes ago. So, how important? And let's like maybe concentrate on Capital, because that's the biggest brand within global, and I think most of the people on that webinar know that station the best. So, how important is the sound designer in the branding and success of global's radio brands, and especially on the Capital side of things? Like, how important are you and your team, or the sound designer in general?
I mean, well, obviously, I'm going to say the most important. But yeah, of course, it's
let's
like,
phrase it different. Let's phrase it more specifically, like the right sound design.
Yeah.
How important is that?
I get it. I mean, it's huge. I think it's such an important job of a radio station. It's almost as important as the music. If you're a music station, it's so important. It's the brand. It's other than marketing and the visualization of these three logos, it's our pieces of audio. All the sound designers and images on this call can relate to it. If it wasn't for us, boys and girls, then, they wouldn't know what station they're listening to. It's such a huge part of the station. But also not only that, sound designers, I really pride all of the global sound designers. We're very proud of our staff, and we like to do a lot of it in-house. And everyone's got their own talents and push themselves, whether it be, like your Friday 5, finding new plugins, or doing various other bits. Like, for example, at Global, when we have TV adverts for Capital, Heart, or whatever brand, rather than go into a sound house, we make that, because again, like I said, we're sound designers. We're not just making sweepers and branded intros. If we have the talent to do that, I'd go a step further and say that, making branded intros and sweepers is more advanced than just putting VO on music for a TV ad. It really is, so that's why we do it in-house, because we can do it. We put on live events, Capital Summertime Ball last month, Wembley Stadium, 80,000 people. It was the Capital team, about 8 of us, that made all the audio for that. Huge show openers, artist intros for the biggest artists in the world. Why should we outsource it when we've got an amazing team that can do it in-house?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great show. I think people maybe remember and maybe rewatch the Europa Plus with Thierry Chamu, who they have a kind of like a similar thing, which is like 250,000 people in Moscow, and their sound designers doing like exact the same for this show. So I think it's a big part, right, of your job. Meanwhile, getting all this Jingle Bell Ball, Summertime Ball, like getting all this live events packaged.
I think also, it's the team love it, not only because it's different, it takes us out the studios, or now we're in a bit of a working from home situation as well. But just being in that live environment, I think sometimes working in radio, you don't see all the listeners behind that radio. Even on this call right now, I get to see all the people watching it. That's more than we get in radio. We have to wait for that thick diary that we all love to hate. But, you know, so I think when you're there at one of the balls and you can walk out in the auditorium and you're seeing all these faces and, you know, in a fraction, the amount of people there is probably, you know, 6% that's listening to your radio station, but it just feels so much more real seeing that. So it's such an amazing feeling for the team to walk out and see that. But also, I guess for us, as we get so much talent through the door, so it's a great time to record interviews and get drops and stuff like that, which obviously is a producer's golden nugget.
Well, Ash, having attended a couple of the Jingle Bell Balls, I can attest to the great job you and your team do with the imaging production that plays at the beginning and introduce every single act, because, I mean, it is really thorough, very detailed, and really well done. So thank you. Mm-hmm. So now on, very similar. They have a big male voice, it's highly produced, a lot of generic writing, and overall, it's uninspiring. So most stations are just hammering the position over and over in very generic and predictable ways. And assuming you may agree with me somewhat, and it's no disrespect to you, but again, a generalization about what I tend to hear in my travels around the world, you know, why does this happen? Is it the programmer? Is it the sound designer? Is it because we all listen to the same peer stations and steal and copy what everybody else is doing, so we all end up with the same uncreative production and imaging? And I'll leave it with this. Would the radio experience be better off if the imaging was more creative than it is now?
Okay, big question.
Well, we got a big webinar, and you're a big star, so let's go.
Okay, I reckon it's because you're listening to a radio station that's not aimed at you. No, not just... No, it's a great question. You've hit me on the spot a little bit, so I need 1 second. I think, you know, everything's different. I think, you know, yes, of course there is a degree to that, but I'll relate to it with music. Okay, this is how I would. I think I've probably had that feedback on our own brands, in all honesty, at some point. And how I would relate to it is how the music changed, you know. And 1 minute, you know, about, when was it now? About 6-7 years ago, all hit music was guitar-based music. So a lot of the imaging and promos and sweepers involved, you know, guitar-based sounds to a degree. Then we went through another phase, and we went into like a heavy tuning phase. Tracks were dubsteppy, so you used beds that were dubsteppy, and then we've gone into a bit more of an EDM phase now. So I think, yes, to a degree it does happen. There are phases. Creativity in terms of scripts, I don't know, I'll argue with you on that one. I think
me too. There are stations that do like a terrific job, like let's say, for example, Chris Davis from Australia from KISS sent me some like really like well scripted stuff like this week, like on Tuesday or something. So it's depends on the brand. I agree with Ash here.
I'll clarify. I mean, I don't think all stations are doing it poorly and writing poorly, but I think there needs to be a greater emphasis on the writing.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, but again, though, the thing is, for me, is people are tuning in to listen to the songs, okay? If we're talking about speech station, let's just get rid of speech station for a second. If we're talking about hit music radio, unfortunately, I wish, but they're not tuning in to listen to my sweepers. They're tuning in to listen to the songs, okay? And I think for that reason, the creativity should be in the promos, for sure. Should be in the morning show, top of hours, probably. But I think other than that, for me personally, and also I spoke to Stax. I went to New York and I met up with Stax, and I had this conversation with him, and I was like, you know, like the States radio is always very wacky, very busy, very comedy-esque and stuff like that, whereas UK radio is not that at all, really. And he was like, oh, we're changing, we're changing too. And I was like, okay, like why is this then? And he was like, yeah, you know, we've been listening and we're trying to simplify things a bit more. And I think that's exactly what I'm saying is, you know, is that they're here for the music. And I think it's really important, obviously, you get your station name out there, you know, so we can get that tick in the box. But I don't think we need to go over the top on sweepers. I don't think we need to go over the top. I think it's important to remind them of your strap line. I think it's important to remind them of your station name. I don't think every sweeper needs a listener or a drop. You know, I think spice them, just have a few around the hour. I think just keep it straight. Even if you're CHR, you know, CHR Capital, obviously, you know, we're the biggest hit music station in the UK. And even now, we've turned down probably our hotness a tiny little bit. So I think, yes, creativity still needs to exist. I think creativity needs to pop through the most in promos, whether it be game promos, whether it be music promos, you know.
Contests.
Yeah, exactly. Like contests, like music promos can be very boring, you know, like station name, new music this week, hook, 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 station name, you know. So I think there's ways that you can get more creativity on that. Morning show, you know, morning show promos for me are a killer. They're very, very, very basic. You know, and again, this happens here, and I'm always trying to spice it up a little bit by writing around the clips. But, you know, it's, you know, this happened today, clip. Tune in tomorrow for more of this, you know, with sponsor. But, you know, break it up. How can you make it sound different? So, you know, we could have Capital Breakfast with Roman Kemp, the biggest stars, montages of random stars, the biggest prizes. Oh, my God, callers, you know, and make them more inviting. Invite the listener into why you want to listen to the show rather than just going for the easy option.
I think it's I think it all depends on the strategy, right? And it just takes, I mean, I think your answer took away kind of like a big part of my follow-up question that I had here. And I think if we can all agree, so the writing is important, but also the strategy within the sound design is kind of like more key these days, that your station has like a strategy, like considering the sound design or the image. Have not been more successful when they were like super creative than today because of the imaging or the creativity that was showcased in imaging, is because of the market not being the same like 10 years ago. And especially on CHR, where everything goes like so fast, right, Ash? I mean, how many new tracks we act on a weekly basis? I mean, we had last webinar, Ken, when we spoke to Guy, like he wanted even to add songs faster and showcase the streaming more and so on. So I think the pace and the pure branding gets more and more important if it's done the right way. Of course, shouldn't be boring or not exciting, but like Ash said, who defines that, right? I mean, I think the listener of a CHR station might be, what do you have at Ash? 18 to 29, is that the target? So they might be totally
18
different.
To 29 is about that. But you're completely right.
In my 40s.
You love Capital, but you know, you're right. We're adding like 7 tracks a week. You know, like 7 new songs a week is a lot of songs. You know, that's also a lot of branded intros to make, but that's a whole other thing. But but you know, look at Harry Styles' latest album. You know, obviously huge for a hit music station. It's so chilled. It's such a chilled album. So if you're having these huge wacky sweepers creative going into one of those songs, it's going to be a car crash. You know, so you've got to adapt to your imaging with the sound of the music at the moment. And especially after COVID, like there's a whole truckload of songs coming, just because everyone obviously was clearly bored at home just writing songs, and now all of a sudden they're just dropping out of nowhere.
And they're all like 80 BPM and like super, like I'll have the same issue with the CHR, like obviously with the library. So a lot of these songs just don't have the pace and the excitement, right? I mean, there's a lot of low tempo and a lot of like, I don't want to say unexciting, because obviously they're exciting for the fans, but musically unexciting songs.
Yeah,
well,
but also
Ash,
I guess
I want to say you did a good job answering a difficult question. I agree with you on the imagers and sweepers that there's not really time for the most part. Although somebody just commented in the box here, a sweeper that really stood out for them with Capital was, quote, "Love summer, love Capital," and he wrote simple but has a vibe. So it can be done, but moreover, I think it's the promos, as you talked about, where there's an opportunity to be creative and build some more personality into the radio station, as opposed to the example you gave. We play this, 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 and this in a very generic way, and you kind of hear those music promos all over the world, and to me, they're just boring.
Yeah, but like Gail's comment there, you're right. Like Love Summer, Love Capital. So our strapline of Capital obviously is TSA, so London's #1 hit music station. But we wanted to own summer. We like to own things. So this is a whole marketing. We've got like buses in London.
But that's a strategic element, right? That's a
Yeah,
strategic
exactly.
element, what I was talking about. I think that's
Yeah,
a strategic
exactly.
element.
Exactly. So on all the buses and billboards and everything is this love summer love capital. And for me, whether it be TV, whether it be billboards, whether it be social media advertising, whether it be radio or imaging, we are one, we are capital. Therefore, that it should be the same across everything. So for me, it was a no-brainer that we should be running those sweepers with the same message saying love summer, love capital. Of course, you can still have summer drops around that, hooks that relate to summer and stuff, I think, but always just bring it back to that main thing. And whether that's the name of the station, the strap line, or if you're, for example, here, the Love Summer Love Capital.
Yeah. So Ash, then the follow-up basically on my end would be like, obviously, Ken described a little bit being like a programmer, his former radio life, the relationship between programmer and producer or sound designer. So how do you feel is the role of a sound designer today, and what should the ideal relationship between a program director and a sound designer, right? I mean, that's an important relationship within a radio station. So what do you think is
Yeah, for
ideal
sure.
here, and how should you work on that relationships that we get them right or get them better?
Yeah, I mean, like, trust me, I know that sometimes it can be very painful. Um, but they need to be your best friend and they need to value you and us as the sound designers. And, I kind of said it earlier, but unfortunately, you have the opportunity to get your egos out. I think we are the second biggest part of the station after the music. There's so many jukebox stations out there with no presenters. The imaging is the presenters, you know? Therefore, it's a huge part of the job. And I think, yes, we need to have that relationship with program directors. But I also understand there's a bit of a pyramid here. Unfortunately, radio stations are usually here because they also need money to make the radio stations run. And the PDs are getting the pressure probably from the sales team. And then they're coming down onto you to make more and stuff like that. And I do get that. I understand that. But I think, program directors do need to have trust in their images a little bit more. I also think it needs to be a working relationship. My guy, for example, is a guy called Brent. He's a top man. But I like to have back and forth with him. So, I don't have the attitude like I'm the best and what happens goes because, I run it. But at the same time, I'm in the job, right? I have the job just the same as all the people on the call here. Therefore, we must be good at our jobs because we've got the job. So therefore, I want to be trusted. So the way I like to do it is, around the corner and, I don't think anyone on this call is probably used to having a 2-week turnaround time. Everything's always next day or 2 days, that's just life. But I think it takes two to tango, doesn't it? So I think they need to be supportive if they want to get the work back.
All right. Just want to say hello. We got some people all over the world watching today. UK, of course, where you are. South Africa, Portugal, Canada, Tunisia, US, Greece, Brazil, and many other countries. So thanks for being a part of the webinar today. We're chatting with Ashley Barr, the group head of brand sound design for a global radio group in the UK. If you got a question for him, type it in the chat box. We'll be getting some questions in just a couple of minutes. So stand by. So Ash, you oversee multiple stations, multiple formats, imaging for global. I mean, just so people know, if you don't know all the brands besides Capital and Heart, which are probably the best known globally, you've got Smooth, you've got Classic FM, which is a classical station, Radio X, a speech station, a gold station. I mean, you guys have all kinds of stations. So how do you make your radio station sound different, not only from one another, but all the competition?
Yeah. It's hard again, nothing's easy. I think, starting with Capital, we have a Capital umbrella, and we have the main station that's Capital, but then we also have Capital Extra, which is our hip hop and R&B station, and then we've got Capital Dance. They're all competing against each other, They might say the same name, but they're all taking a listener away from each other. And I think, so first of all, I'll start there. It's difficult. The audio, unfortunately, that we couldn't hear, which you'll be able to hear later on, features 3 promos, and it demonstrates the difference between Capital Extra, and Capital Dance. So I advise you go and have a listen to that because you'll be able to hear the subtle differences. But I think you just need to trade on the on the pros and the biggest points that what makes them different. And I think that comes down to the music, voiceovers, and sound design. So, for example, our main output of Capital, we're using music very similar to the playlist. We've got relatable voiceovers. With Capital Extra, we're going for a lot more grime kind of sounds, or hip hop or R&B. Again, with relatable voiceovers. And then with Capital Dance, obviously, we're using proper dance tracks. And we're using Kelly as our station voiceover on Capital Dance, the big K3. So she sounds great on that. So yeah, so I think for the first one, for that one, is just producing it to match the brands. But across our portfolio, some of them are easier, like Classic FM, kind of just, it sounds a little bit different to Capital. And obviously Gold Classic Hits, it will sound different. However, I think, Capital and Heart at the moment, the two logos at the bottom of this page, is a nightmare. And the reason I say that is because just the music, and you'll know this from testing, unfortunately, Ken, if you could fix it for me, I would love you forever. But the problem is these two brands are just getting far too close to each other. And Heart 5 years ago was an AC station. It is an AC station, but like 5 years ago, it was an AC station. It sounded very different to Capital. Today, I mean, it's definitely not an AC station. They're rivaling us, and they're playing the same tracks as us now. So like when a new track drops, Capital, the hit music station, naturally starts playing it. So does Heart. So it's difficult. It's hard work. We bounce off each other. And it's just keep trying to push it up, and then so we'll nudge it and find like a crazy new trick or something, and then all of a sudden they're doing it, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, like this is annoying.
Yeah, I don't envy you.
Yeah, it's coming closer for sure. The music cycle is coming closer. We see that every week when we discuss branded intro for the services. I mean, you could tell literally like a lot of CHR tracks a couple of years ago were never making it like properly in an AC format. These days, like 2 weeks later, they're like hot on the AC stations too. So you'll see like the music cycle gets like close between these formats, even if the listenership is very different. So Ash, what's ahead? How is sound design changing? Where is it headed? Like, quick, your thoughts on that one. Like, what do you feel is going to come next? And let's maybe focus on the CHR side of things, and because I know it's a very broad and very unspecific question, but
sure. I think for me, it takes me back to where we started this conversation. Moving into this modern world, and I think that will take us all developing our skill sets. And I think radio, I genuinely believe radio will always be radio. It will always be in your cars. It's always going to be there, and that's the beauty of radio. If that wasn't the case, it wouldn't exist anymore. So I think sound design and imaging in that front will always remain. But I think the next thing for sound designing and images is advancing their skills. And not only just doing stuff for radio, but doing podcast stuff as well, doing the YouTube videos for the stations as well. I think that's the next step for sound design. I think also, touching on it before, is we'll probably end up doing a full circle. As music changes, we'll go back to the world where, like 2 years, 3 years ago, where everybody was tuning everything because it was the new cool thing to do. I think now that's kind of sailed away a little bit, and it'll come back, just like Filtergate, like we joked about it, but Andy, like Filtergate 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was the tool that everyone was doing. Same with reverse reverb, it was the tool that everyone was using. But these are all skills that kind of die away, and then they'll all come back again.
You see it with music, and we'll have like a big and really, guys, the webinar with Guy Sapolion was really mind-opening for me as being not music scheduling person. Like, we'll see like all these songs now coming back and making it to the playlist because TikTok and so on and so on. We'll see Guns N' Roses like being listened to by like 18 years old because they don't know it, right? For them, it's all new music. I mean, we'll see the big one, Kate Bush, like running like everywhere 80 songs. So like I'll believe the same thing. I think it's full circle, and I think it's like all media. So I really believe, obviously, a lot of the radio stations have not reach that level what you guys are doing in terms of like being everywhere and having that package, but I also see that as a full circle type of branding proposition. Let's say, praise that way down the road.
But also, you know, at the end of the day, the people that are mastering and producing these tracks have the same skill set as us. They're using a DAW, you know, they're using a digital audio workstation, and therefore they're doing tips and tricks that we can do. And that's what I mean. That's why everything comes about. So, for example, when Calvin Harris drops his new album, I think he already has, or he is this week, then, you know, there's going to be so many more dance tips and styles that he's using there that we will replicate instantly onto Capital Dance, just because it keeps us staying fresh and staying modern.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's also how I've done it my entire career, like looking into music and see like what's feasible and working in imaging as well. And we see it still today with all the filter stuff, right? I mean, that's coming from dance music, and everybody on every ZHR station in the world has done that
for sure
to a certain
designers. So tell us what Global's doing, because you guys have a great initiative.
Yeah, so a few years ago now, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we, you know, you're completely right. It's a dying art, which is good for dog eat dog and for getting a bigger paycheck if you want to jump to another business. But you know, unfortunately, this is a career that's always going to need to exist. And therefore, yeah, unfortunately, where the talent I came from, like I said, from Gemini FM, a tiny little station in Devon in the UK, it doesn't exist anymore. Because, you know, it's been taken out by a big network. So a few years ago, Global launched a school, an actual school full of all age ranges, where they do your traditional, you know, math, science, English and all that. But at the same time, as part of your degree, you learn broadcast. So you get to choose whether you want to do visual video, or you can do journalism, or you can do radio production. So we literally, as you're there at school, and you know, your secondary, you can learn how to make branded intros. You're learning how to do promos. You're learning how to do show openers. And, you know, it took a little while to set up, but I think my last 5 hires have come from there, because they're literally learning on the school. You know, actually this year, we've just had our first person who's left school, left the Global Academy, and has their full-time show on Capital Extra. So they got trained up as a presenter at the school whilst doing all their normal stuff. Because obviously there's a radio station at the school where they can, you know, work on. And he now has his own overnight show on Capital Extra. So, which was amazing. There's Mark. Mark's commenting. So Mark works at the Global Academy.
Yeah, I've seen it too. Great.
So yeah, he's worked there. I work very closely with Mark. Mark's, as he said, I work very closely with him. He's the one that feeds me the talent. He'll usually, you know, tell me who's the ones to look out for, and they'll, they get in touch. And we're about to take on our new apprentices as well. So each year we take on an apprenticeship, an 18-month scheme. And they come in and they can either do marketing, radio production, you know, or everything. But it's a great opportunity now in the UK where people can apply to go to school. You know, they start in September just like other schools. And yeah, they can come and join us at the school, work with amazing people. And yeah, they just kickstart career, really. You know, it's a fantastic opportunity to kickstart your career if you're into the media landscape.
So this sounds almost like the Barcelona Football Club. They get them in young and they bring them up and hopefully move them up into the, you know, to the show one day.
Yeah,
so.
I think the chance in Global's Academy to make it up to the top is just higher, like with the bazillion kids that played in that Barcelona academies all around Europe. But
yeah.
So listen,
I think that it is true. It's not biased though. Unfortunately, we do lose some to the BBC and other places. So we just need to. They come to us, they learn their trade, and then they go somewhere else. So,
but it's still a great initiative. I mean, it's still a great initiative.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
Absolutely.
It's so important for our medium. It's so important for radio. So, I mean, thank you guys for doing that.
So, Ash, just how would people find out more about the academy in case somebody
there? But yeah, I think that's definitely the modern way of doing it for sure. If you want to go and set up your own school, but I think other than that. I think for me, the answer would be apprenticeships and internships. I know that like that's how before the academy, we were looking at that. But it also takes a lot of work to have an apprenticeship and an internship. So I can't take any, it is a lot of work, but I think that is the best thing now. I think, learning on the job is, I'm always, I was not the cleverest at school, I won't lie, because I just wanted to get straight into work. Whilst I was at school, I was working in the radio station. I started when I was like 13, and unfortunately my attention was in radio rather than school. But hey, it worked out for me, Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's just a case of learning on the job and get going.
All right, so let's put you in the hot seat now. First question comes from Richard Burgess. How much imaging is too much? We tend to image intro, outro, every other track, in and out of ad breaks.
I don't think that's nearly too much. I would probably say not everything. Your presenters should definitely be doing some of the work. If you were coming out of a track, I would get them to do a presenter link and then go into another track. I wouldn't always use a top and bed. I wouldn't always use an ID. But I do think, imaging is very important. People need to know what station they're listening to. Otherwise, may as well just be on Spotify or listening to iTunes. So I think, it needs to be, of course, you need a fancy bit at the top of hour. And then you need a good bunch of sweepers. I think you do need an inter break. You need an outer break of your ad breaks. Branded intros. Every song doesn't need to be branded intro. I think we play about 4 or 5 brandeds an hour. We tend to only play the brandeds of the newer songs now, just because we have artist IDs on them. So when someone will hear a song and be like, "What's that?" Obviously on the front it said, "Hey, I'm Dua Lipa," so they know straight away what that new track is. But as soon as that song becomes recognizable, we stop playing the brandeds and it just goes onto a sweeper. So yes, I think it is important. I don't think too much imaging is the problem here. I think it's how about it gets used on the station.
And the scheduling, right? How it's scheduled. So Gary Berkowitz also been on our webinar, and he's asking, what is Ashley doing with basic song-to-song imaging that is more today than 1985 Star Wars style? I assume he's meaning like a lot of zips and zaps. So
yeah.
You guys do a lot of dry imaging, or?
Less now than we used to. Again, though, my laptop's about to die, so I better plug that in. But yeah, I think I hate it. I hate it, basically, Gary. I hate that. There is nothing worse than just putting in sound design for the sake of sound design. I hate it. So, like, no one tunes in for capital. Like, no, it's not what people want. I think it's little and often. Simplify it a little bit. I think, I love a hit, like a little light hit, and a tiny little starter, but it definitely doesn't need the 1985 Star Wars style that you're saying. We have the occasional dry, if a song has a good intro, then we might play a dry over it. But in all honesty, most of the time now we just cut the intro off and go straight into a hard start. But yeah, definitely, I think you need all the tools, really. You do need all of the options, and it's a case-by-case basis. If you're going into a song that has an intro of 8 seconds, you've probably got an 8-second sweeper there that is almost dry, if not fully dry. That will sound great over the front of it. So yeah, that's what I would do in that situation.
All right, next question comes from Ray in Nairobi. How many times a year do you refresh your imaging, and is there any criteria for that?
I'm going to split this question down the middle. I think jingles, we probably change the sung jingles once or twice a year. In terms of imaging, all the time. We've got good presenters. I mean, all presenters are fussy. I'm sure you all know that. But all presenters get bored of a bed. Once they're using that talk bed, it's probably been on for about 2-3 weeks, and they're already asking for new beds. So I think we do keep on it. Obviously, branded intros will keep the station sounding fresh anyway. Beds we change probably monthly, so we'll add a new 10 to 15 beds every month. And then sweepers and stuff like that, it depends. If they're topical ones on the morning show, then they're updated probably every 2 weeks. But your traditional station IDs and stuff like that.
Good job.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Ash, I know we're going to wrap it here because I know you have a birthing class that you have to leave for shortly. But thank you so much for today, man. This was really a great session, and
It was awesome.
You shared so much, and we're very grateful and appreciative for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, it's been great to hear and to talk about our craft. You know, we all love what we do, and it's just it's an honor to be able to share my opinion.
Okay, so a couple more things before we roll here. Again, thanks to Ash for joining us today. A copy of the video will be posted by tomorrow on the P1 Media Group website, on Benztown, on all our social channels. So if you want to watch it again, watch a specific piece you saw again, or share it with others, feel free to do that. It's also on YouTube at any time, as our entire video series is, which is now in its 3rd season. So want to thank Suzanne, our producer. And before we go, tell you about our next webinar. We're going to take August off for the holiday season, but we're back in September. And the date will likely be the 15th, but we'll confirm that. We've been teasing the story for a while that we're going to have. We're going to talk to the guys behind a station in Edmonton, Canada that you either know about and want to know more about, or you don't know anything about it and you need to know about it. These guys have been #1 every quarter except 2 since their inception in 2010. And they've done it by adding a whole lot of talk to a music station, which seems counterintuitive to just about anybody that works in music radio. It's an amazing story. It's really never been told before from the horse's mouth, but we're going to have Ross Winters, who's the group program director, and Mark Hunter, who's the original PD of Now Radio in Edmonton, probably September 15th. But of course, we will get the word out as we get a bit closer. And we just got a note from our producer that says her computer crash. So that's
the guys on, and it's going to be a really good one. I mean, thanks for everyone. Thanks for all the imaging guys joining us today. Absolutely. Jake, Saki, thanks, Bilal, all you guys. With time to see you again soon somewhere. Ash, of course, thank you so much, man, for making it.
Thank you very much.
If you want to reach Ash, Ken, let's share Ash's email address. If you want to reach Ash,
I've got it here.
Okay, so you want to type it into the exactly. It's ashleybart@global.com. So if you have follow-up questions or stuff that we could not answer, I'll make a promise that Ash has to keep. Ash is more than happy to to share to answer your questions. Ken, from the bottom of my heart, happy birthday, and I hope that was the only thing you had to work on today. So I hope you'll enjoy your birthday and celebrate your 35th, which is much likely gonna happen.